Welcome, podcasters, podcast interviewees, and we're not going to have a huge cast for these redacted episodes, so I need to figure out a way to be creative. This is episode 518 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 6th of July, 2024, and featuring Doctor Who Redacted S.O.S, written by Juno Dawson, and starring Charlie Craggs as Cleo Proctor, Lois Chimimba as Abby McPhail, and Holly Quin-Ankrah as Shauna Thompson. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I hope I pronounced any of those names correctly. With me are acting technical director Alex Fireheart.
Podcasters reviewing a podcast. It's going to get weird.
About podcasts. And joining us later will be Erin Romeo Moon Burke. She was running late today and will hopefully be popping in early in the news. So let's get to it. How's your week been?
Well, in the intervening time since we last podcasted, I went to my state capital on a short trip to attend a wrestling show, and
That's right. That's why we weren't here last week.
Yeah, like it wasn't. The show wasn't bad. Honestly, I might end up finally putting something up on my newer, like, Fresh Start YouTube channel where I review the whole tour. But I mean, like, some of the international names on it, I just either didn't care for or wasn't hyped for. But yeah, and some of the people in the crowd, which I later found out from someone who was on the show, are just a bunch of dickhead locals who like hijacking shows by chanting bullshit. But yeah, that brought my mood down. And like at first I was just like, well, people have been starting to drink since before the show started, so I shouldn't really be shocked, but still brought the mood down.
Yeah, so you showed up to watch the show and they're like, but what about me? I'm the main character.
Well, it's also in some cases because of what some of the chants were. There were two different women's matches, and they kind of hijacked those. One of the teams on them were playing up the Greek heritage to get heat, and that led to some chants that, not like outright using slurs or anything. Which, yes, there is at least one slur in Australia for people from either Greece or just that general part of the Mediterranean. But that surprisingly never came up, but there was some chants in that match that were not great. Not to mention other stuff, but yeah, it was like, And the annoying kind of thing was that I ended up not being able to hang out with anyone I knew that lives down in Brisbane, so it was like I ended up just being like alone in my hotel room for the most part. So it was kind of like, oh, I've got like no one to talk to in person outside. Like it's just all on my phone, so that kind of sucked. And being in both cramped airplanes and then cramped at the show, my shoulder started playing up again. So and it's winter here, so it's kind of warm at the moment, but probably just because I don't have the fan going. But it has been actually cool lately, so the cold's been getting into it and making it like aggravating it. So that's been kind of annoying, but thankfully I've been avoiding doing too much heavy lifting at work to avoid making it even worse. Because I'm like, okay, after what happened last time, and the doctor was like, you might need x-rays if this doesn't let up. I'm like, well, let's not get to that point again, so I'm just gonna take it easy. But yeah, like, I mean, once I got back. Oh, I guess that's another funny thing. That literally the day I got back, um, I was up until after midnight and I get an email and it's Nintendo has this event called like Nintendo Live or something where it's invite only. Like you enter a draw basically. Um so rather than paying, if you're showing up at all, it's because you were picked to show up.
Okay.
And I actually I actually got picked. So now I'm like, oh, well now I need money to get to Sydney, which is like
Ah.
the next state over. If I
Mm-hmm.
do if I do go. But the annoying thing in hindsight that I didn't think about when I initially put in for it was that it's a 2-day thing and that a lot of people I know went for the Sunday one and I went for Saturday because I didn't know that people were going for the Sunday one. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
damn it. Oh well. But on the off chance I might, if I like at this point, if I go, I'm probably gonna go for like just long enough to where I can maybe meet some people I know from Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, we'll see. Otherwise,
Well, good
they'll.
luck with that. So for me, I would say two-ish major-ish updates. First off, so I've been practicing my art over the past month or so, and very recently, as of the past few days, I've started transferring that to digital art. So I've been
Hmm.
drawing using the stylus on my tablet. And it's definitely an experience. So that's definitely something new to me. The biggest, I mean, there's a few differences between paper and a tablet. Different friction. You can't just lie your hand down because that confuses the touchscreen and such. Things like that. So definitely things to get used to. I'm still looking for the right app. I was really surprised the app that I ended up using. Just it seemed to be one that people recommended when I Googled for different tablet drawing apps. It mimics real life, uh, not instruments like art, artistic utensils and such. Um, which I imagine that's really good for some people. And it's there's times it looks a lot better. But when I'm trying to do things like I want clean lines and I want to a paint bucket fill, that's not the sort of thing that sort of program does. It's more like, do you want it to look like a real paintbrush? Do you want it to look like charcoal? It's like, yeah, that's great if I knew how to paint or use charcoal very well. So I may switch to a different app, but right now I'm just kind of getting used to it, getting used to the way my hand and arm need to be at a different angle to work on a tablet than they would on a paper. But it's a really interesting experience. I'll probably talk about it again in the future when Aaron is here for this part of the show. The other thing that's newish is I previously, I think on the podcast or at least off it, talked about the fact that my desk chair, which is rated for a weight like half what I weigh, was not doing so well, and I
Hmm.
used some electrical tape to hold the leg together that was having trouble, and that's been going on for a few months where the leg had broken but electrical tape was holding it together.
Hmm.
Now it's very clear that it's bent to the point where that's not doing enough of the job, and so I've kind of just put that by the wayside. I don't have money to go looking for even a cheap chair right now, so I'm experimenting with different setups. So I spent the past couple of days sitting on a dining room chair, but that messes with my neck and my wrist
Hmm.
because of the different angle. So I've moved my whole setup to my quote unquote living room area. I don't necessarily know if this is any better because my laptop and my monitor are now at very different heights from each other. So it's still not great for my neck. But if it does stay here, then I sort of have a TV again because my monitor is big enough to be considered a TV. It's just at a different resolution. So I can just plug my Roku in and watch TV normally when I'm not using the computer. So that'll be a benefit if it stays here until I get a new chair. And that is it for me. So on tonight's show, we have birthdays and news, a fair bit of each. We have a bit of geek talk. We will not be doing any review of Shames today. Reviews of Shame, I should say. Matt, I didn't mention this during the opening. Matt is still not with us, but he's kind of settling into place. He will and expects to catch up on everything next week. Then we have our episode summary, our review, final thoughts, and ratings. And ratings, especially this week, is going to be kind of weird because these are kind of self-contained stories, but the first one is very much and here's the introduction to the 10-parter rather than its own real sort of story. Almost like the first episode of Flux was. But we're not reviewing all 10 episodes in a row, so we kind of have to rate them all separately. So moving on to birthdays. On June 23rd, we have Caitlin Blackwood, who played Amelia Pond in series 5 and 6, turned 24. On the 24th of June, we have Yasmin Page, who played Maria Jackson in the first 2 series of the Sarah Jane Adventures, turned 33. On the 25th, we have Sheridan Smith, Lucy Bleeden Miller, in the 8th Doctor Adventures from 06 to 011, and then again in 019, with some short trips in between. She turned 43. Also on the 25th, Lucy Benjamin, who played young Nissa in Modern Undead. I'm pretty sure someone other than me added the word young because
that was me.
I like to just put these names in and see if it confuses anybody. She turned 54. She's not so young anymore. Also on the 25th, Roger Murray Leach, who was the designer in Ark in Space Through the Talons of Wang Chiang, turned 81. And I'm not entirely sure what just designer means because there's set designer, art designer, music designer. I'm guessing it's something like set designer, but it doesn't really specify. Moving to the 28th of June, Daniel Weber, who played Darius Pike in K9, turned 36. Also on the 28th, Lala Ward, who played the second incarnation of Romana Vratralundar from 1979 to 1981, plus plenty of Big Finish, turned 73. The irony is not lost on me that I was able to get her name in one take, but Incarnation took me 2 tries. Moving on to the 29th, Maureen O'Brien, who played first Doctor companion Vicky Pallister in 1965, turned 81. Moving on to July 1st, we have Ace Bhatti, who played Haresh Chandra in Sarah Jane Adventures Series 2 through 5, turned 54. Dave Prowse, the Minotaur and the Time Monster, but better known as the suit actor for Darth Vader, turned 89. July 1st, Jean Marsh, who played Sarah Kingdom in The Daleks' Master Plan, plus Big Finish and Morgaine in Battlefield, turned 90. Moving on to the 4th of July, Marcus Wilson, who was the executive producer for Doctor Who alongside Stephen Moffat from 011 to 013, turned 51. And our final birthday, on July 5, Philip Madoc, who played Broccoli in Daleks Invasion Earth movie, 2150 AD, the Warlord in War Games, and other smaller roles, would have been 90 but died in 2012 at 77. So happy birthday, Caitlin, Yasmin, Sheridan, Lucy, Roger, Daniel, Lala, Maureen, Ace, Dave, Jean, Marcus, and Philip. And welcome, Aaron. You've arrived just at the end of the birthdays.
Awesome. Cool.
which is good. That means you can, even though you weren't here for birthdays, you can still give my throat a rest for new releases.
Okay, let me open up this stuff here.
Moving on to episode news. The final 7-day 4-screen readings for The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death are in. There's also 30-day ratings I've heard of out there somewhere, but I don't know where to find them, so I don't have those. The Legend of Ruby Sunday finished up with 3.5 million viewers, making it the 19th most viewed program for the week, with 4 of those 18 slots going to the European Football Championship. Empire of Death finished the week with 3.69 million viewers as the 18th most watched program of the week on British television, with the top 8 going to football. That wraps up season 1 with an average of 3.71 million viewers per episode. And again, these are the UK numbers. Disney Plus is not giving us their numbers. So it goes. Moving on to spin-off news. The CV of Line producer Carolyn Perry Jones has confirmed new information about the upcoming spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea, featuring the Sea Devils. Perry Jones's CV lists The War Between the Land and the Sea as a 5-part fantasy drama with 1-hour episodes, filmed by Dylan Holmes Williams, who we would know from 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble, and produced by Edoardo Ferretti, who has produced shows such as A Discovery of Witches and Industry. The series is in pre-production, which, if you don't know, is the stage which includes everything done before filming actually starts.
I will say, in hindsight, we could have had some breaking the rumor mill, but I'm realizing in hindsight it's probably better to just bring it up now.
Okay.
There have been rumors flying that Freema Agyeman is going to be in this as Martha, but there is literally nothing official pointing to that.
I saw a tweet about it. I guess there was an image. I don't even know. Do you know this?
I think a Moffat fan page that doesn't list itself as a fan page posted about it, and so people are thinking that was Moffat actually saying it. But yeah, best I can tell, it was a fan page.
Is that that Facebook page that shares a bunch
I think
of
so,
Moffat
yeah.
quotes but never actually says when those quotes are from?
Probably.
But yeah, there was an image of like it was like an image that had like Sarah Jane, Gwen Cooper, Freema Agyeman, and like 3 doctors on it. And I don't know who originally shared that image. Maybe that was that Moffat page you're talking about. And people were like, this image only makes sense if Martha Jones is the star of The War Between the Land and the Sea. And I was like, that's like, I hope you didn't hurt yourself with that stretch. Like, because it could just literally be, oh, somebody made, an image of characters from Doctor Who that they like. Moving on to cast and crew news, we have some alumni issues to talk about. First off, in a day of sad news for genre fans, an article on the 3rd of July revealed that Neil Gaiman has been accused of and is currently has 2 investigations, one recent, one older, of sexual assault committed against 2 women. One woman, the 23-year-old former nanny of Gaiman's children, reports that Gaiman sexually assaulted her within hours of their first meeting in 2022. Gaiman reportedly, I think this is like secondhand to the podcast that revealed this, that was then transcribed into a news article. So I don't necessarily know that he says this. They say he said this. Claims that there was only consensual contact over a 3-week sexual relationship that did not include intercourse. The alleged victim claims that sex acts were often rough, degrading, and non-consensual. It's noteworthy that while this is controversial to some, the very existence of any sort of physical relationship between a person and the nanny of his children constitutes a sex crime in many jurisdictions because he is her employer.
Mm.
So this, yeah. Well, before giving any opinions, the second allegation comes from a fan who met Gaiman in 2003 when she was 18, and he was over double that, which, yeah, he was about triple that with the first one. And entered in a relationship with him 2 years later that she claimed involved rough and painful sex that she neither wanted nor enjoyed. While it's important not to jump to conclusions, even though they're extremely rare, false accusations do exist and are probably more common for celebrities than for normal people. If even the most basic facts of these accusations are true, that paints fan favorite Gaiman as being at best a creep with no understanding of boundaries, and at worst as a potential groomer and relationship rapist. Based on the nature of these accusations, there's a very good chance that nothing will be proven one way or the other. That's part of the reason why the vast majority of sexual assaults are not reported. It's kind of hard to prove that someone you were, especially if you were in a relationship with them either before or after, did anything non-consensually. It's difficult.
Especially, like, it wouldn't shock me if his argument is, and again, allegedly don't sue us. But it would not surprise me if it's a matter of it started consensually and then he went a bit far for what they were comfortable with. Consent was revoked and he kept going.
Right, which I think that's a lot of the time when you hear these celebrity cases where they're like, oh, it was consensual, and the other person's like, no, it wasn't. That's a lot of what it is. Where there's, oh yeah, they consented up to a point.
Yeah.
And then after the point, consent was assumed when there was no reason to assume it. Which is why consent is, well, I'm not going on to a huge thing about different types of sexual assault, but yeah, that's why it's been such a push to teach consent to everyone. Make it very clear. All right. Our next article, and I don't have a script for this one, but I know enough of the details to cover this. So to start with, while receiving an LGBT Ally Award on the 21st of June, David Tennant gave a speech basically in support of trans people and saying, what's her name? That a UK official by the name of Hemi Badenoch, which I've probably mispronounced because I didn't think to look up a video recording of the pronunciation before this. So he basically he said he wishes that she would shut up. Which, yeah, of course, brought up a bunch of accusations of him of being racist and being misogynistic and such. As other people pointed out, he really did that in the most polite way possible for wanting someone that you would hate to stop being a public figure. But this is someone, I guess, who has been, openly transphobic, as there is a movement of being in both the US and the UK. And of course, where this escalated even further is that J.K. Rowling, who, is recently known for having been ratioed to oblivion by Kaiser Neko, who basically pulled up receipts on all of her transphobic bullshit that she claims she never said. But she said that David Tennant was a member of the quote unquote gender Taliban. It's worth noting here that Tennant's main role in this is supporting his transgender child and, being an ally to other such people. instead of just being a general dickhead. And I will also know I think all of the surviving doctors and several companions have, in one way or another, came out in support of Tennant after this. So all of the all of the the actual on-screen doctors anyway. I'm not sure about less well known, like actually no, some of the spin-off ones too. I forget which one, but I remember at least one of the spin-off doctors or special doctors also said something in support of him. So yeah, it's Doctor Who's united.
It is kind of funny that, like, I could see a lot of people who were overlooking, not necessarily like outright agreeing, but like also being saying that, oh no, I can pretend that's not happening and just, continue to like Harry Potter and throw money at her or some bullshit. She has now picked a fight with David Tennant. That's not a fight you're gonna win, honey. I'm sorry. People like him more than they like you. That is gonna cost you money. Not like necessarily a hell of a lot, because some people will probably still double down, but now that she's actively going after an actor that at this point is more relevant than she has been in forever, yeah, that's that's only gonna backfire.
And to be fair, other than the fact that she's a billionaire, Kaiser Neko has proved that he is more relevant than she is currently. So I don't know, think about where that places David Tennant.
Yeah.
Like at this point, she's only relevant because she's running a hate campaign.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which places her right up with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, and also just remind people the cast review that she keeps citing is a bit of like shit science, basically, is what I've read online about it.
I am not surprised. I do not I think I've blocked her on all my accounts, so I don't know what she's been citing or sharing.
Yeah,
but it's not surprising me at all that it's fake science.
I've seen people debunking it and stuff, so.
All right. So this brings us on to new release news. So it is Aaron's turn, so I can.
Yay! So now I can die. I can die. Anyway. So news releases, we've got season 1 of series of the 2024 series, Doctor Who DVD and Blu-ray artwork and details have been announced. Looks like we've got Ruby and the Doctor. Ooh, that actually looks really nice. We've got Ruby and the Doctor kind of on opposite sides of the shell here. Very colorful, very I really like that. It really pops. Of course it's got like Church on Ruby disc 1 is Church on Ruby Road with extras. Disc 2, Space Babies and the Devil's Core. Disc 3, Boom and 73 Yards. Disc 4, Dot and Bubble and Rogue. And Disc 5 will be Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death, which is strange, but it looks like there's a ton. Oh yeah, there's Doctor Who Unleashed episodes 1 through 5 on Disc 6, and Disc 7 is Doctor Who Unleashed episodes 6 through 8. Doctor Who Unleashed Unseen Tales. Yeah,
all like all one that I think has been illegal in the U.S. so far. I think.
Oh really? Yeah, because Doctor Who Unleashed
there's no U.S. Release, and they've been taking down YouTube videos sharing it.
And Tales of the TARDIS, the Pyramids of Mars, which is nice. It looks like they're going to have some kind of a retrospective or something to help people refresh on Pyramids of Mars too. And it looks like there's a ton of extras on each disc. That's why there's only like one episode per disc here. There's a bunch of extras that go along with each episode. So
and Joy to the World is not on it because they're looking for some extra cash from selling that separately, probably.
Yeah, I mean it's shocking to me that Church on Ruby Road is included in this and not separate, because usually
So
the
that
specials they
doesn't
do sell
surprise me.
separately.
One, because they probably already sold it separately.
Mm.
And two, also like even Disney Plus is putting it together as part of the season. Because
Mm.
if you haven't watched The Church on Ruby Road, you can't follow along with the season plot,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
which is unusual for a Doctor Who Christmas special these days.
Hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the last one I can think of that you kind of needed to was like,
Snowman.
yeah, pretty much.
Huh, what is Tales of the TARDIS? Because apparently Tales of the TARDIS version of Fourth Doctor Adventure Pyramids of Mars.
So Tales of the
That's
TARDIS
with a
is what they've been unleashing for only BBC iPlayer viewers.
yeah.
They're basically extra little mini episodes of the companions and their doctors in the modern day, like reminiscing on the story. Like it's basically a framing device for the
Yeah.
episodes.
Hmm.
So if this were a normal Tales of the TARDIS, which it's not for multiple reasons,
Yeah.
it
Mm-hmm.
would be like Tom Baker and Sarah Jane, which of course we don't have Sarah Jane's actor,
Mm.
so that wouldn't work. But it
Mm-hmm.
would be them kind of reminiscing on that adventure, and talking about it and things like that.
Mm.
This one's a little different. It takes place during Empire of Death. It's the Doctor and Ruby
Hmm.
talking about Sutek.
Hmm.
So it's a
Mm.
little bit different from the others, just from the stuff I've been able to manage to see.
Yeah.
But that's
Okay.
basically what Tales of the TARDIS is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it makes sense to do it that way for that story, given that, like, I mean, when they did I forget exactly what, but when they did an episode of it for Second Doctor stuff, it was Jamie and Zoe being pulled into it to have a chat and reminisce because Patrick Troughton's no longer with us.
Hmm.
Yeah, but so what that should basically mean is, oh yeah, so that disc, basically the main episode for that disc is the movie cut of Pyramids of Mars, essentially, with
Yeah.
this
Oh, okay.
framing device uh by the 15th Doctor and Ruby.
Mm.
Hmm. I also like the not finalized artwork. It's very blue.
Mm.
Hmm. All right. Moving on. I guess we've got Doctor Who season 25, the collection Blu-ray range announced. So, oh, why did you? Let me bring up the stuff for that. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got penultimate season with Sylvester McCoy, of course, playing the Seventh Doctor. Let's see here. We've got Behind the Sofa in Conversation, Looking for Dursley, The Making of Doctor Who, Silver Nemesis Special Edition Omnibus, as opposed to the previous one, which was VHS extended version. The Collectors, the Doctor Who Escape Room, Team Seventh Doctor. When Sophie met Leslie, Sophie Aldred chats with Leslie Dunlap. And then oh wow, we got all kinds of other features too. We got updated special effects exclusive to Blu-ray. Practical effects looks back at his work. Season 25, Stephen Mansfield looks back at his work. Hours of raw footage and outtakes, hours of special features previously released on DVD, including documentaries, features, audio commentaries, and more. 5.1 surround sound, archival material from BBC Vaults, exclusive convention footage, HD photo galleries, info text, PDF archive, and more. Wow, this is another one that looks like you get a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Hmm.
Although it is funny for like how notoriously stingy the BBC is with money that they bothered to fund updated
Mm-hmm.
effects for the stories. I almost kind of wonder if that was less the BBC putting money into it and like some fucking rich super fan was like, "Hey, I'll throw money
Mm-hmm.
at you if you do this."
Hey, could you make this look a little less shitty? Yeah. Yeah, this looks pretty interesting here. Like, and I'm someone who kind of I drifted in and out of Sylvester McCoy's season quite a bit. I think I've seen most of it. Sorry. Oh. All right. So I guess Bill's back. We
Yep.
just I think we finished up talking about the collection. Unless you had anything else to add to it.
Nope.
Okay, cool. All right. Moving on. Oh, shit, there's actually a bunch of different stuff. Sorry, I did not open any of these.
Well, you don't need to open them. They're just Big Finish.
Yeah.
Oh, except for maybe the last one is news.
It is
The
a
other ones are
cult box
just
one. All right, so we got
yeah.
Big Finish. We have Dark Gallifrey, the War Master, Part 1. Okay, it looks like David Warner and Lisa Bowerman.
You're going backward in time
I'm
instead of
going backward.
forward.
Okay, 7 day. Goddamn.
Which probably means
Everything.
you open the links instead of reading off the
Yeah,
outline.
anyway. Okay, so 7DA, The Last Day 2. Written by Matt Fitton and Guy Adams, starring Sylvester McCoy and many of his
That stands for
companions.
Seventh Doctor Adventures. If that
Oh,
wasn't
Seventh
clear.
Doctor Adventures. Okay, there we go. Um, so that is coming out, and then we also have another release from Big Finish. The War Doctor. Or I don't
Which
know.
one?
TW, The Restoration of Catherine, written by James Goss, starring Tom Price and Samuel Barnett. Torchwood. Wait, what?
Yes.
Yeah, Torchwood. Okay, cool. For some reason, I was hung up on the Doctor, and I keep forgetting that Torchwood is still being produced with Big Finish as well. uh, yeah, starring Tom Bryce, Samuel Barnett, Restoration of Catherine by James Goss. And also, that's June 25th for The Last Day 2, 27th, June 27th, The Restoration of Catherine. July 2nd will be Dark Gallifrey, The War Master Part 1, written by James Goss as well, starring Lisa Bowerman and David Warner. So that's our Big Finish news. Moving on to Cult
Which
Box. Huh?
I just want to say it's really surprising to me that David Warner stuff is still coming out. Like he died, I want to say last year.
Hmm.
And also, it's kind of weird to me that they have an unbound doctor in a Dark Gallifrey story.
Hmm.
And I hope that they're not getting to the point of, Lisa Bowerman is important in Big Finish and David Warner was her husband. Therefore, we're inserting his character into canon without a good reason. I that I'm not accusing them of it. I'm saying I hope they're not.
Yeah.
I would have to listen to these stories to form an actual opinion on it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
He died in 2022.
Mm.
My assumption at that point would be is that he gave them fair warning that his health was deteriorating, and it might have been like the best I can compare it to is like Freddie Mercury before AIDS claimed him, where he was like, just give me stuff to do, just throw stuff at me, I'll record as much as I can before I go.
Tupac as well. Like he had like 3-4 albums worth of unreleased material recorded in like the last 6 months before he got shot.
Okay. All right. So that's it for Big Finish news. Moving on. Unless there's anything else that you guys want to add.
Just that last article about Big Finish.
Okay. Doctor Who Stuff of Legend Big Finish Live. Audio drama company announced live Doctor Who drama starring Paul McGann and India Fisher. So that looks like it's gonna be kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know anyone see a synopsis on it. Something is afoot in Lonely Corners village of Merrymaid Bay, rumors of dead men working in the tin mines have sent a chill through the community. It's up to the Doctor and Charlie to get to the bottom of the mystery. Can legends of the Buka that haunts is it Buka or Baka? That haunts the mines be true? Or just what awesome power do the Doctor's greatest enemies? My cat is attacking my leg.
Ah,
The Daleks threaten to unleash upon the universe. Yes, it's past my bedtime, and he's very disturbed by the fact that I'm not in bed now.
ah. Yeah, sorry.
So,
If I had remembered this article, I would have written up a summary, like a little summary to just read. But I
mm-hmm.
forgot I forgot this article existed because it's down at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Shall be performed on the 14th of September. I don't know if you already said that. And
No,
it looks like it'll
yeah.
also be released to purchase on that day as well.
Mm-hmm. I was just scrolling down. I also saw the Sirens of Time Redux as well.
Mm,
Being released as part of the ongoing celebrations. Nicholas Briggs is visiting
yeah.
the company's first Doctor Who adventure.
Yeah, that might be interesting to listen to. I'm kind of wondering if like it's a re-edit. They're not. I don't think they're filming new material. So it's
Hmm.
basically just kind of is this version of the story a better, smoother listen than the first version of the
Well,
story?
this is actually getting multiple versions: the bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, each with different levels of bonus extras.
Yeah, but those aren't extra versions of the story. Those are just
Oh.
like addition. It's like a collector's edition, a
Mm.
legacy edition, those
With
sort
like
of
a bunch of
things.
making of stuff and whatnot on it, I
Yeah.
take it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Possibly signed stuff.
The lowest version one is not limited edition. I remember seeing that on another article.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not out yet, so we hadn't covered it yet.
Okay. So I think that's everything, right?
Yep.
Cool.
And that moves us on to Geek Talk. And let me see our time. So we're at the end of our time for Geek Talk. But I do expect that our summary and review are going to be shorter than normal. I will still try to make both of these short. So if I go over 3 minutes, someone please cloister bell me. First thing is I managed to watch the actual first Superman movie. No, it's not the movie Superman. It is Superman and the Mole Men from 1951. And I see why not a lot of people talk about this one. It was basically, I guess, at least according to Wikipedia, it was basically a sort of pilot for a Superman show. And it kind of fits a lot better as just like a random episode of a show. There's really nothing. I mean, it includes Superman, but there's nothing inherently Superman about the plot. It's basically, they drill deep enough that mole men come out into the world, and people are quick, literally jump the gun and decide that they would rather shoot these things than actually try to use any sort of reason. So Superman punches the guy, and somehow the guy doesn't die. Actually, the most interesting thing I found about this was that I think the cliffhanger where you first see the Sensorites was an homage to this movie. Because that's exactly how the scene where you first see the mole men is. So that's interesting. As for this movie, it's missable. I watched it for completeness' sake, and maybe it's more if you're a historical Superman fan and you want to see how they wrote Superman back when Superman was the main reporter and Lois was mostly his camera person, it seems, because it was 1951. So if that's something you want to see, check it out. But it's not actively bad. It's just actively nothing. Also, I watched well, actually no, that's right. I was searching for it using the wrong year. So I originally thought I saw it free on YouTube, but I couldn't find it free on YouTube when I looked for it again. It might be free on YouTube, so it's check. I don't know if it's the original production company still around.
Mm.
Moving on to books. Uh this past well, actually well, yeah, sometime in the past 2 weeks, I finished reading Final Fantasy VII Remake: Traces of Two Pasts by Kazushige Nojima and translated by Stephen Kohler. And this story is basically a prequel to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Although it's most of the events happen before the actual main story of Final Fantasy VII. So the first half of the book is Tifa's backstory. It basically
Mhm.
focuses on from uh, basically when she's a little kid, even like around the point when she had her when her mother died, all the way up to a couple years before the start of Final Fantasy VII. So she's, I want to say, 21 in Final Fantasy VII, or possibly 20. And this ends shortly after her 18th birthday. But it basically is how the Avalanche group in Midgar kind of come together. So she first meets Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, and then she meets Barrett while she's working at Seventh Heaven. Um, it's a pretty decent prequel. It shows how she, why she started martial arts, how it affected her life. It shows what happened after the Nibelheim incident. Um, all of those things. It's probably better read if you know the Final Fantasy VII story. But if you're reading it before playing Final Fantasy VII or before Remake, it probably, that probably doesn't hurt either. Um, I was engaged. I was interested in what was going on. I was interested in whether or not we're going to see some of these characters again in the third Remake game. The next part of the story is Aerith's backstory. So this is basically what she did before she escaped from Shinra, um, how she escaped from Shinra, and then her coming into her life in the slums. Um, so yeah, no real surprises there. Although, yeah, you get to see a little bit more of the characters. Why the house that she lives in is so nice and things like that. Then there was a third story, and I'm not entirely sure the point of the third story. It was almost tacked on. It was a character who touches on Aerith's story, but is mainly focused on characters that don't appear in the games. Which is weird, right? There's a Glenn in the games, there's a Glenn here, but they're not the same Glenn at all. And unless that's explained in some way in the third game, as of right now, there's really no point to that third story. Um, so yeah, I even if you ignore that third story, which it's not part of the title, nobody talks about it. The main book is I would say, if you're a Final Fantasy VII fan, especially if you're interested in the characters of Tifa and Aerith, it's worth picking up. Um, if you're not a fan and you don't really care about them, then probably not. But as a big Final Fantasy VII fan, it definitely was worth it for me. And that is the end of our Geek Talk. Matt is not here, so we skip our reviews of Shame and our season 1 overview. And we move on to Alex with the summary, which means I need a stopwatch.
Mm-hmm.
Which, what do you think? 1 minute, 2 minutes?
We'll say.
This is not. If you take 5 minutes for this plot, I don't.
30
All right.
seconds.
All right. Tell me when you're ready for a countdown.
Yeah, it should be good.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, we open on the Doctor trying to get a message through, and then cut to a recording of the Blue Box Files, a podcast trying to chronicle appearances of the TARDIS, though they don't know what the police box is. And possible conspiracy theories revolving around its varying appearances around the world over the years, discussing in this recording the events of the Series 4 episode Partners in Crime as they tackle adipose industries. When they go to play something, the audio is garbled and they stop the recording for now. We also get to know a little about the podcast crew. Cleo is a trans woman with an unsupportive mother she'd rather not see. Shauna is the no-nonsense skeptic of the three and possibly a lesbian, going by some dialogue. And Abby is in a wonky relationship with a guy named Craig and a full-time carer for her mother. Cleo gets at some point a voicemail from the doctor, but when it comes through, it's also completely garbled. Cleo is then sent to meet someone named Penny Carter from The Observer, who might know something all about the adipose industry stuff, with ultimately Penny telling Cleo that she remembers just about everything, is pretty confident that it was involved aliens, but forgets who this mystery man she saw and argued with was. Abby then gets a message in the mail from the doctor, but when she rings Cleo to talk about it, completely forgets what she even called Chloe to talk about in the first place. Chloe then gets a quick call from her brother telling her that her mother is sick, and then we end on Cleo getting another call, this time from the Sarah Jane Adventures character Rani Chandra, informing Cleo that the doctor is trying to kill them. The end.
All right. I think I delayed a second hitting it, but I got 1 minute 55 seconds.
I was definitely hoping I could get it in under 2.
Yeah, definitely under 2.
It would have been like even thingoer than that, but I thought, well, just for something to talk about, I'll bring up that we get to know a little bit about each of them.
Yeah, you included a little more than I thought, but I think you skipped over what's his name? Jordan, I think. Is that his name?
Oh, the brother? Yeah.
Oh,
like
yeah, Jordan.
Yeah.
I basically reduced that to has an unsupportive mother and also gets a call from her brother later.
Right. Okay. I got distracted because I once again forgot which one was Abby and which one was Shauna, because I don't know why I'm having trouble. Like, maybe because like there's not enough physical representations of them for me to visualize what the difference is between Abby and Shauna, which so they kind of like, and that I don't know their voices well enough to tell them apart just yet. All right, so we're on to what we like about S.O.S, starting with Alex.
I guess I like the dynamic of the 3 main characters that we've got. Like, I don't know how well any of these women knew each other prior, but they definitely nail the vibe of this is a bunch of friends just dicking around doing a podcast. Yeah. Like they give off a very natural, I can buy that these people knew each other before they took on these roles kind of a thing. Which is always great. Especially for something like this where you're trying to portray which I guess is kind of a unique perspective that we have on this, in that sense of like doing
of us doing a podcast. We're reviewing a podcast in which people are pretending to do a podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's very, and like I just generally I like how they get that like I like the dynamic and how they get it across very quickly of like, you know, enough about these people without it feeling forced for everything to come up. There's like, it feels like there's reasons. No one has informed attributes either. So that's nice.
Okay. Informed attributes. I think I know what you mean, but you want to elaborate on that?
I mean, like, there's no instances of like them, like, you know, I say in the summary that Shauna is the skeptic, but it's not like it's not like that there's no evidence of her being a skeptic and someone just calls her that.
Got
Like
you.
we
Okay. So
get
they
quite a
show,
bit.
they don't just
Yeah.
tell. Mhm. Okay. Aaron, what did you like?
Okay, so I think I actually wrote down a few things. Um, I actually kind of like the music, especially towards
Hmm.
the end of the episode. They kind of introduce kind of not the theme, I would say, but like the incidental like background music. I thought was actually pretty well done. It felt
Okay.
kind of a little bit slow, a little bit somber, in the appropriate sections. Because I believe, gosh, can't remember quite when it happens. I think it happens around when Cleo's talking to Jordan at some point. I could be wrong. But yeah, I thought it was a nice touch. It sounded like it was professionally done. Um yeah, I thought it was good.
And on that note, this is directed by Ella Watts and James Robinson. So they are possibly to thank for that. Although director and sound are two different credits on here, so I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Sound is by David Thomas and Arlie Adlington. I'm not sure what there is other than sound here. So
Hmm.
unless that means they did sound effects.
Hmm.
All right,
Uh
so I really go,
mhm.
go ahead. If you
it,
have,
it could be. I'm not quite sure myself,
mm,
so.
okay. I realized that the main thing I was going to talk about is actually all encompassed within one scene. So I decided to look up something else, and I guess I'm gonna say I like the way they're actually going through these Doctor Who stories. Like it could have just been like really like either barely connected to Doctor Who or these kind of
Mhm.
lazy connections. Um, like Penny Carter was an actual character in the Smith and Jones story. Who you see having a conflict with the Doctor. In the way that she's talking about in this story. Now, it does look like they actually recast some of these returning characters using new voice actors for whatever reason. Maybe it was a budget thing, maybe it was an availability thing.
Mm.
Who knows? So they didn't go quite as far as Big Finish probably would have done of
Yeah.
like actually bringing
Hmm.
back the actor from 20 years ago.
Mm.
But still, like, the fact that they go to the effort of like, yeah, there's a character from Smith and Jones. We're going to interview her and have her talk about her side of the story. Um, which I've realized is a recurring thing throughout this series, which don't not to spoil things. So I just really like the way they did that.
Mhm.
All
Hmm.
right, what do we dislike about the story, Alex?
Hmm. Um. Honestly, I'm realizing I've basically got nothing, so I guess to get it out of the way now, because it's likely going to be a recurring issue, this kind of feels too short.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Not that I want these to be like an hour long or any ridiculous crap like that, but I don't know.
It's shorter
Like,
than an episode of K9.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And especially, I'll put it this way. If the rest are fairly self-contained and it's mainly this one that feels like a setup leading into something, then this especially kind of um would have benefited from being about a half hour at least. Even if it was
Mhm.
like this was the longest one just because it involves the most setup and then the rest were shorter because you don't need the setup now. Um and it possibly could have allowed for it to be more self-contained with like a hook rather than feeling like a part one of a multi-part story.
I kind of feel like you had two different things you disliked there. So you had the length and the lack of a self-contained thing.
Well, yeah, it's more like I feel like it could have the length tying into that. Like if it was longer, it probably would have been able to have more in it, so it could have technically been self-contained. But you know,
Okay. All right, Aaron, what did you dislike?
Um, I thought I didn't actually like Cleo at first. Like she kind of grew on me later, but she was almost a little too over the top. I feel almost stereotypically over the top. She does kind of mellow out and become more nuanced a little bit later in the episode, but which is good. But like I just felt that she was a little bit annoying, a little bit exaggerated when she first comes onto the show, and she's got her podcast persona on basically. So, and then we get to see what she's actually like when
Okay.
she's not behind the microphone and stuff. So she does get better later on. But I didn't really have too many issues with the show. And so it was just kind of nitpicky for me to
You,
point out like how
you
she
know what?
begins.
I wish I listened to that more closely in the rewatch, because
Mhm.
in the beginning, like the first time we listened to this, I was like, okay, I don't know which voice belongs to which of them. I don't know their
Mhm.
personalities. So the podcast part might as well have been one person or five people. It wouldn't have made any difference to me. But that's the part you're highlighting now. So I'm like, you know what?
Mhm.
I don't remember any of like the differences between them in the podcast part, other than the fact once one of them talked about big pharma. I don't remember who that was. Um,
that would have been Shauna, I think.
okay. I mean, I'll say this, like this is something, I mean, I've been saying it about faces for years, but it probably applies to voice as well. When it comes to that sort of thing, years of Zoom have really ruined me for anything that doesn't have people's names under their faces.
Hmm.
And I mean, I was never that good at telling voices apart in in Big Finish stories. This has come up a few times,
Hmm.
but yeah, especially when they're pretending to be in a pod. I mean, when they're acting out a podcast,
Mhm.
it's not going to help. But yeah, can you remind like what part of the like podcast persona like started that?
This was at the very beginning of the podcast. Like you
Right.
tell that she's over exaggerating her interactions with everybody. Like she's acting like the goofy silly gay friend and all that. So yeah, like it wasn't like once
Which
you
is funny
kind of
because I think she
Mhm.
might be the only straight one on the cast.
Really.
I
Oh
mean,
well, yeah, but
I'm not
she's
sure.
doing like
Do they say who she wants to date at any point?
no,
And
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
like, because I know the other
yeah.
two, one's gay and one's bi. I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
sure about Cleo.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. It felt kind of over the top, a little too over the top for me.
Okay.
But yeah, but like I said, it kind of when she's talking to her brother, it kind of changes too. So like, she's more serious. She's still kind of sassy and fun, but like she's. It feels like she knows that there's a time and place for everything,
Hmm.
and that
Okay.
she's just kind of using this as kind of like this is how I'm supposed to act on this show. This is my show persona.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Got you. Because at first I thought you were going a different direction because she's, I would say, in a very realistic way, has this very sort of strong personality of like, I'm a trans girl with a chip on my shoulder. Who,
Yeah.
it's a well-deserved chip, but I can see
Mhm.
how that would be grating on some people. I thought that's what you were talking about at first.
Mhm. I mean, it could be a little bit, but like you get to see a lot more of her.
Hmm.
So it's not just, yeah. It's not
Gotcha.
just, that she's not just the sassy gay friend or sassy trans friend or the trans woman with the chip on her black or on her shoulder. She has a deeper character than that. She's got other things that she's
Right.
dealing with. So,
Okay.
yep.
And yeah, I'm going to say this kind of touches on some of what Alex talked about, but I would say my dislike is that it doesn't really have like a proper story structure, which makes it to the point of like, oh, we almost have to review this as a 10-parter, but then you look at the other 10 parts and it's,
Mm.
well, some of them have a beginning, middle, and an end. But this, it's like, is the conflict that Cleo has to go and interview Penny? Well, no, because after that, there's still more conflict.
Mm.
Is the
Mhm.
conflict the fact that she doesn't want to go on record? Well, no, because she never goes back to Penny a second time and tries to get her to go on record. So it's kind of muddled on that front. And then on the larger front, it's just like we're setting up a 10-parter and we're setting up all of these things to discuss in the future. That's fine, but there's no real completed story here. Even the story that's self-contained to this episode doesn't feel completed with everything going on.
Mm.
All right, favorite scenes, Alex.
Um, I'm going to go with. I'm just trying to think of which one. Because they're like kind of the same, but it's a matter of which of the two I want to go with. What do they talk 3 times? I think they talk twice. But because I'm trying. The funny thing is, I'm trying to remember like which scene is it that the specific dialogue that I'm thinking of happens in. Bloody hell.
Between
I'm
between
guessing
who?
between Cleo and her brother. Because like
So I
I
think they
guess
have
like
two conversations. There's the one
mm,
that I kind of am planning to talk about, and
mm,
then there's later on the one where he's like, "Oh, mom is sick."
mm.
Hmm.
I guess I'll specifically go with the bit. I'm going to have to assume then what I'm thinking of is the first conversation. But I'm going to specifically go with the bit where like um the brother is trying to be all like, oh well, mum listens to the podcast and she loves it, and Cleo is
But I think that
like,
was the end of their first conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and Cleo was like, so what, like she owes me more than that. Like it was
Hmm.
it was nice, especially like, I mean, I could have had Cleo be my like favorite overall thing because it's like, hey Russell, this is how you handle this.
Mhm.
Like, and I mean, hell, oh, I forget the actual actress's name, but
For Cleo,
yeah, um, she is,
uh,
and
Charlie Craigs.
yeah, Charlie Craigs is apparently actually like a full blown activist, so I
Hmm.
could actively see her
Not
being
actively.
in I could see her having been in like a consultant for the scripting of this. Whether she had full-blown input or was like, hey, I don't want to handle, so like, if we're gonna do this, then here's how we're gonna do it, kind of a thing. Like, I could see her having had opinions in that, but it was also just nice to be like, oh, okay, my mom likes the one thing I'm doing. What does she want, a cookie? It's like, I'm glad. It's like, it's nice to have it be like just that, getting that point across of like, you've got to do the work. You can't just expect me to give a shit just because you're a parent.
So while you're talking about that conversation, I'm going to jump in because the favorite scene I was planning to talk about was that whole conversation with them, and it's specifically that it's the family dynamics are realistic, they're messy, they're fucked up. There's the hard line, no forgiveness. Social justice side would say, fuck their mom and fuck Jordan for still associating with their mom. Cleo should just cut off her family completely 100%. And then you get the side. Oh, that's right. That you were talking about off podcast. That was not while we were streaming. The side of, you should forgive. They're your family. The idiot's lantern.
Yeah.
Moral of well, you should give another chance. There's that side. And this comes down firmly in between where real families fall. Where it's like, well, Jordan has a great relationship with their mom and a good relationship with Cleo, who is staying with him. And so Cleo has a good relationship with Jordan and a terrible relationship with her mom, who kicked her out of the house. And those are family dynamics that happen, and they're real and they're messy, and you can't just throw like truisms and I'm forgetting the word I want to say,
platitudes, maybe
platitudes. There we go. Yeah, you can't just throw platitudes at the situation and be like, well, there you go. If you do this cliche, life will turn out, because no, life doesn't turn out. It's messy and fucked up, and that's exactly what we're seeing here in a realistic way. All right, Aaron, favorite scene.
My favorite scene, let's see here. I actually had quite a few stuff written down.
And you're last, so you have the full pick.
I like Shauna's line, every time you lie, an angel continues not to exist. Yes, that has to be it. Which was actually a really kind of a cool call out. So there's a lot of like, obviously there's going to be a lot of references in here. So
is that a reference?
I believe it's a reference to the angels. It's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh,
like I think it's a meta.
Later.
Yeah, I think it's a meta reference to it. Like, I don't think Shauna actually knows that what the angels are or anything like that. I think she's just making.
No, I think that's just an anti-theist line.
Yep.
I was gonna say, yeah, because like when she started saying it, I was half expecting the like the whole like, oh god, what is the actual line? Like every time like a baby smiles, an angel gets its wings or some shit like that. Is the line?
Because I thought she was going to say like an angel loses its wings. Like that's what popped into my head.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I see it, and it's just got a lot of different interpretations to it too. Like I said, I took it as kind of a meta reference to like the angels. So yeah. And did we mention, so we know that Penny was in that. Are all of these characters from previous episodes then?
I-
Like Cleo and all of them?
No, no, like the guest stars, at least some of them
Oh,
are.
okay.
I'm not sure if they all are. I haven't listened to enough, but like Penny is. There's a guest star from. Well, I don't want to spoil them, but I know of at least two guest stars from other stories that are popping up.
They do mention a couple of the companions too.
Not to mention there's a reference that I missed the first time through, but caught on the second, that they reference the group Linda from Love and Monsters, which was kind of funny to catch the second time.
Speaking of which, the comedian that guest starred in that was a birthday this week, but I was like, I don't think people outside the UK know him from anything, so I did not include him in the birthdays.
Well, I can mention it later in further notes, but so that we can get to least favorite scenes. But
all right, so with that, least favorite scenes.
I'm trying to think if I actually have any. Let's see. Maybe I can come up with one.
Yeah, it's not really that bad of a story, actually.
I think it's also just a matter of, like, even with K9, sometimes, just because it's so short, it's like, oh, do I want to take that? There's so little to pick from. God. Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to skip because I can't think of anything. Like, nothing, not even really anything nitpicky.
So flawless episode. 10 out of 10.
Not that it's flawless, it's just that nothing is like really jumping out at me as like, oh, that bloody moment, or etc.
Okay.
My God, just
Aaron,
makes me
least
angry.
favorite scene.
I've got a couple of nitpicks in that, but like the thing that really stood out to me was the whole pop-up made kind of a nasty screeching sound, which was annoying. Which it's supposed to be annoying too, but dang, it's just they kind of nailed it. I wanted to like throw off my headset at the point. I'm like, no, don't like.
It, yeah, I guess you could definitely argue this probably should have had like a sound warning before it started. That it's like, there are going to be bits where the audio peaks, so you should probably be ready for that.
So my least favorite scene, I guess, is similarly minor, and that is the cameo from the Doctor felt like it was just there to have a cameo from the Doctor. It didn't really go anywhere. It felt like it was there for no reason other than that they can say, and Jodie Whittaker was here. So yeah, that ended up being my least favorite scene because of that.
You know what? I've kind of got one now. And it's more of an issue with like how society is treated in, like, I wouldn't even purely say New Who. It's probably happened in Classic as well. But like the fact that all this stuff keeps happening predominantly in the UK, and Cleo is meeting with Penny, and the subject of aliens comes up, and Cleo is a skeptic as far as that. It's like, oh, I don't know about, like, she says she's open-minded, but also like, oh, I don't know. Aliens, that's going a bit far. And it's like, hello. The amount of stuff that's happened. I mean, I will admit,
yeah, she's very much the Scully of this.
Like, but yeah, it's just like that always kind of bugs me, especially in a way. It's kind of worse because they mention Linda from Love and Monsters, which is a group of people who actually have long-term memory and can remember that shit keeps happening. So, but yeah.
Well, they know shit keeps happening. They've been tracking the TARDIS through periods of unrest.
Yeah, but it's like, for some reason,
They're like, if
despite
a
all
blue
the
box appears in your town and your town is fucked.
yeah, but like for whatever reason they seemingly, or at the very least Cleo can't entirely make the jump that it could be aliens with all that's happened.
Yeah, it's not until it's not until the David Tennant the new, damn it. There's 2 years of David Tennant specials. So I
The
can't even say the
09
David Tennant
specials.
specials. The 2023 special, the 60th specials is the first time where they're just like, yeah, and now they're going public about aliens because there's too many goddamn aliens to keep it secret. And like, yeah, and yet somehow they've managed it. It's like, now that there's a fucking, unit helipad Avengers Tower thing,
Yeah.
they kind of have to admit that, shit is happening. Or do they? I mean, I guess everyone knows about the giggles, so there's that. So yeah, final thoughts. And I was right, we made up for lost time.
So continuing on from that thought I did just have, one thing that I forgot to mention that I did like about this is whether it goes anywhere or not, I am at least intrigued with the notion of no one being able to remember the Doctor. For one thing, it's a thing of shocked that not a single time in this episode no one asked the question Doctor Who, because that very much feels like what this setup is like, oh, he's a doctor or something. But yeah, it's like the idea of the Doctor's existence outside of just knowing that, well, there was someone there. But every time I try to think of him, given that, at least in this episode, I'm just saying him because it was Tennant that was being referred to. It's like, I don't know who the hell that mystery man was. Like, that's an intriguing little...
Because I was like, at different times they're talking about different doctors. So yeah.
But so like that's an interesting thing, and you could, depending on how this goes, I'm almost kind of wondering if this is actually, and it's why I was going to go into it before, but the one bit of like, okay, I'll let it slide, go with like Cleo still being skeptic and like Shauna being skeptic and stuff, is if this is somehow going to turn out to be a reveal of this is why people keep forgetting. Like, there is something going on that keeps making humanity forget. And it's not just that throwaway explanation in like I think it was like an RTD first era story where it's just like, oh, it was either that or Moffat's run, where there's like an offhand line of like, oh yeah, people just kind of tend to forget. Like, they just move on.
It was basically people rationalize the things that they don't understand.
And it's like,
the human mind has an amazing capacity for self-deception.
Like, it would be nice if this ends up being like an explanation of, like, in the long term, that this ends up being an explanation of, oh, this is why people keep forgetting. Like, there's something that just keeps happening that keeps making everyone forget, that you can retroactively apply to the show to be like, okay. It's like, you would kind of hope the show would do it rather than side media, but we'll see.
Is that your full final thoughts? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Aaron, final thoughts.
Okay, well, I wasn't quite sure what I was coming into. I think I'd heard Doctor Who Redacted mentioned before in the past, but like I'd never actually listened to it or anything like that. So I was expecting to come in just to like...
Oh yeah, you weren't here when we covered like the news articles about it, I think.
Yeah, because I thought we were just coming into like a behind the scenes Doctor Who podcast, and I was like, well, why are we looking at this? But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see that it was it was a fiction based podcast where they're telling yet another like side story for the Doctor. They're mentioning a bunch of different incidents, such as the adipose industries stuff, which I thought was kind of fun, and I also have a question. It sounds like Cleo's dad was a victim of some kind of alien attack. That possibly the doctor, kind of the same thing as in Love and Monsters with, was it Elton or
Yeah.
so? His mother is killed to a shade. It sounds like something similar happened to maybe Cleo's dad, because she mentions to Jordan, her brother Jordan, that their father just up and disappeared one day.
Mhm.
So, mhm,
Yeah, I think that's foreshadowing something.
mhm,
Mm.
yes, that'll be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, they could follow along the same line as Love and Monsters, which very much feels like it's kind of a redux of Love and Monsters, but maybe done a bit better.
Mm.
Hopefully, with a little bit more of an intriguing, hook here to it. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I was pleasantly surprised by it, and I can't wait to listen to more. So that's my opinion of it.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. This is interesting. It definitely has its own, at least at this point, its own sort of different flavor. I mean, even though we've had queer Doctor Who before, I think this is the first time we've had queer woman written and led Doctor Who, with
Hmm.
all of the main cast being queer in some way. And it definitely gives a different flavor to what you're listening to.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know Juno Dawson's identities or anything of that nature. But judging by the way she's written this, I wouldn't be surprised if she's queer in some capacity as well. Um, yeah, I find this also very funny. Given that we've recently watched a season where a major plot point is, oh yeah, there's a field out to 77 yards that makes it so people just ignore the TARDIS and don't pay attention to it. And now we're getting this whole story about, oh yeah, people notice the TARDIS and are paying attention to it. So that's just kind of funny, and reinforces the fact that, yeah, Russell just pulled this directly out of his ass. Um, Otherwise, yeah, it's I don't think the first story was great as a story. But that's also why pilots of television shows tend to suffer, because they're too busy being pilots and not focusing on telling a story. And I think
Hmm.
this is a decent pilot. It introduces the characters, it sets up some conflicts between them and with other people, and some other things that are going on. So it does that job well. It also sets up, we've got whatever's going on with the Doctor and the companions. We've got whatever's going on with Ronnie. So that'll be really interesting to see more of. All right, ratings.
As a very quick thing, and suddenly this actually explains the writing of Cleo, Juno Dawson is a trans woman.
Okay.
Mm, okay.
Um, who has seemingly written some queer non-fiction, I think mostly, possibly some fiction. She's also done some Big Finish as well, so that probably explains why she was picked
Okay.
to work for this. Um, hmm. It's only going to be hard to rate on its own.
Mm. I
Like,
listened to this one for the first time, and I was almost like, maybe we should rate it as a single 10-parter. But the other
Mm,
stories I think are a little more
hmm,
self-contained. So
yeah. I guess by virtue of it not, it's like it's good enough that I can't like be too harsh, but it's also just kind of like, well, this is a good starting point
mm-hmm.
rather than being like, oh, this is amazing, etc. So it's like it's solid. There's not a lot of negatives, but I'm also like, is there enough positives to push it too high? So I'm going to, for now, have to give it a 3.5.
5. Aaron.
I think I will also give it a 3.5.
And I'm going to agree with the majority. On due to the lack of being a story in and of itself, 3.5. This is the second week in a row in which we have had unanimous 3.5s. That might change when we get some of Matt's ratings, but we've had all 3.5s for Empire of Death and Redacted S.O.S. So, let's see. Out of 477 things reviewed, this is 341 or tied for 319. It is on par with Jago and Lightfoot, the Beloved Devil, Jago and Lightfoot, the Similarity Engine, Destiny of the Doctor, the Time Machine, Destiny of the Doctor, Death's Deal, Jubilee, The Ravagers, The Ordeal of Peladon. It is better than Jago and Lightfoot, the Bloodless Soldier, Terra Firma, Fourth Doctor Adventures, Trail of the White Worm, the Poseidon Adventure, Blue Forgotten Planet, and Destiny of the Doctor, Night of the Whisper. And it is not as good as Dust Breeding, Ninth Doctor Adventure, Fright Motif, Sarah Jane Smith, Ghost Town, or Ninth Doctor Adventures, The Curse of Lady Macbeth. And that is all we have to say about Redacted S.O.S. Oh, sorry, don't forget to, almost forgot all of the other things to say. Don't forget to like the video. Where's the outline? What happens when I'm doing all of the roles? Let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode, if you've watched it, if you've listened to it. If you haven't listened to it, it's literally 15 minutes if you skip the ads and the credits. Don't forget to like the video since you've listened this far. Subscribe on YouTube to get our exports, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time, we continue following Redacted Season 1 with Hysteria, written by Juno Dawson, and starring Charlie Craggs as Cleo Proctor, Lois Chimimba as Abby McPhail, and Holly Quin-Ankrah as Shauna Thompson. We'll see you then.